panelist is able to join us shortly. He was unable to access his video. My name is Akela Peoples. I'm CEO of Mental Health Research Canada, and I'm delighted to be welcoming you here today for another session of It Starts at the Top, Workplace Mental Health. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I am moderating today's session from the city of Toronto on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And we are most grateful and respectful of the important history of this land. I'd also like to acknowledge our partners at Beneva. Beneva is a group insurance provider in Canada, and they are very supportive of Mental Health Research Canada's work in spotlighting workplace mental health related topics. Just a little bit about the purpose of this seminar series. It starts at the top, workplace mental health. Our focus as an organization is to shine a spotlight on C-suite executives and leaders who are focusing on advancing their workplace mental health initiatives. Today, we're talking about the 4-day work week, a phenomenon that is growing globally. And while we realize that everyone in the audience may not be in a position to be working in a workplace that is going in this direction or being able to implement this, there's a lot of lessons learned and information that we're going to unpack that we believe can be applied really to any workplace. So we look forward to an exciting discussion today in relation to this. We've had over 300 people register, and the session, by the way, will be video recorded and on our website afterwards. So if you missed it or if a colleague missed it, we will follow up with the video link. We've had more than 9 provinces, people from more than 9 provinces in Canada register. We've had people from municipal, provincial, federal governments, MPs' offices, senators' offices, representatives from corporate Canada, from industry associations, and many other friends in the charitable and not-for-profit sectors, and some global attendees as well. So we're very excited about that. And our 3 panelists are actually from 3 different continents. 2 of them are in the UK, and 1 of them is here in Canada. And just my last note in terms of housekeeping items before we introduce our panelists. The Q&A section will remain open through our entire time together today. And I encourage you to put questions into that. I will do my best to watch those questions. But to any of our panelists, if you see a question in there that you would like to answer, please don't hesitate. Please jump in and verbally answer a question if you see something that might be of interest to the wider audience. Also, there will be a quick survey, 3 questions. It'll take you about 30 seconds. Feedback is a real gift to us. It takes a lot of planning and effort to pull together these sessions, and we would love you to take a couple of minutes, either during the session, the link will be in the chat, or after the session, a link will be sent to you. Just a couple of comments around the usefulness of this topic and suggestions for others would be really, really appreciated by our team at Mental Health Research Canada. So without further ado, we are going to meet our panelists, and I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. Just a quick check. John, are you with us yet? I know he was with us in audio a few moments ago. Okay, so maybe we will start with Maureen.
Sure, thank you, Akela. So my name is Maureen Juniper. I'm a co-founder and partner of PRAXIS. We're a national marketing and PR company based in Toronto. We work in the services sector, providing creative services to corporations, primarily in the consumer packaged goods space. We've been in business for 23 years. And we have 25 employees, and we are in our final month of our 6-month 4-day week trial. And we're very pleased with the results and happy to say that we have already announced to our staff that we will continue with the 4-day week.
Great, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that in detail in a moment. Now over to you, Charlotte. I know you're from New Zealand, but I think you're joining us from the UK, and it's this evening for you. For the rest of us, it's this afternoon.
Lovely. Look, thank you very much. So yes, I'm Charlotte Lockhart. I'm a co-founder and managing director of 4-Day Week Global. We are an organisation that supports businesses to transition to some form of reduced hour model as seamlessly as possible. We also conduct research into the benefits of the 4-day week or other forms of reduced hours working. That research is run out of Boston College, but we have local researchers in each of the markets that we go. And yes, and Maureen's experience with, we've already told our staff, is quite common. For businesses to feel that they have got enough of it sorted before they finish their pilot. It just shows that they've got great leadership and agile thinkers from the bottom up.
Wonderful. And we're going to hear a lot more about that in a few minutes, including your inspiration for starting this global initiative as an organization. I'm just going to do a check-in with John Nash. I see perhaps James, his colleague there.
Yeah, hi, Akela. John said he can't make it, so I'm filling in for him at this current moment in time. Thank you for everyone who's in the panel and watching.
Okay, so James, are you speaking on behalf of him?
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about your role in the organization? Because I know that you've been running this 4-day work week initiative for many, many years, but could you just tell us a little bit about the organization, Nicholson and Search? Okay, I think we've lost John. So John Nash, I've had a couple of interviews with him in the last couple of weeks, and he's actually the founder of a search and consulting firm, and he has been implementing the 4-day work week concept for since 2015, actually. So he certainly has a lot of content in terms of his perspectives on this. Just a couple of things for me in terms of mental health research Canada before I go back to Maureen and Charlotte and ask us to or ask you to tell us a little bit more about your experience with the implementation. Mental Health Research Canada engaged in a survey in 2021 commissioned by Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. And we found that more than 1/3 of Canadians were burned out at their jobs, citing symptoms of exhaustion, negativity, cynicism, and reduced efficiency at work. The study also found Canadians reported feeling supported at work. Only 1/3 said that their company is seemingly committed to a low-stress workplace. Only 35% of Canadians say their employers that they know of offer programs or policies to prevent burnout. And 51% of younger Canadians are less engaged in their workplace and less likely to say they enjoy their work. Now, that was 2021. We continued to do data collection and actually just released polling data last week. And our results nationally show that burnout has only marginally improved. That's not good news. And Canadians' mental health was improving in the last number of months, but really we've seen a plateau. So this is a conversation that's important for all of us. We have heard terms like quiet quitting and bare minimum Mondays. If anybody in the audience is not aware of those terms, I invite you to Google those. But there seems to be a general shift in the conversation about the value of time. And whether that's in our lives in general, but also specifically in the workplace, it seems to be a conversation that continues as we are moving forward here. Folks know that Shopify canceled meetings some time ago to allow for more uninterrupted time. And there are generally a lot of things happening around conversations about how can we change the way we work with a focus on workplace wellness to ultimately have happier employees and probably more productive employees, which is something we're going to hear a little bit more from Charlotte about in a moment. Maureen, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey to the 4-day workplace, 4-day week workplace. I know that this was in your personal business plan for your company before COVID. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So yes, you're right. We had been thinking about a 4-day work week probably about 5 years ago. We put it in our 5-year business plan. And then the pandemic hit, and that's really what caused us to speed up that and our ability to understand through the support of 4-day week global how to do it. So initially we really felt that we had to wait for the world to catch up on this concept of a 4-day week before we would be able to deliver it. But again, with the pandemic, we saw stress levels go up with our employees, and so we wanted to see if we could implement it sooner than we expected to. Employee wellness has been a priority for us in our agency for some time. And then we started also to learn that this was a big surprise to us, that not only could we bring something very valuable to our employees, but we could also improve our business. And that was obviously of interest. So improving productivity and efficiency. So we were delighted to hear that that could be an effect of this trial as well. And of course, like everybody else, we're facing a difficult labor market. So we wanted to do everything in our power to retain our staff and also be able to attract new best-in-class talent. So it's sort of a combination of reasons that caused us to move forward and enter the trial with 4-day week global.
And so when you put this in your business plan, put it in writing in your business plan, I suspect you might have bounced the idea off of a couple of others before putting it in writing and committing to it. And what kind of reaction did you get from others that you may have initially vetted this with or discussed this with?
Well, I don't think it would come as any big surprise that anybody that we talked to about it were delighted. Certainly our employees. One of the things we did do, which was highly recommended by 4-day week global, was to ensure that your trial is employee driven. So we did put together a committee, volunteer committee, to guide us through our trial.
Great. Well, we look forward to hearing a little bit more about your action from your clients and your employees in a couple of minutes. Okay, Charlotte, dig in. Let's hear about this, where it comes from and what it's all about.
Well, it comes because my partner, Andrew Barnes, was considered completely insane back in 2018. And Maureen, you probably had some of this as well when you first put it into your plan. What do you mean? We have the fortunate advantage in our business is that Andrew is the majority shareholder and controls the board, and so he announced to the world, well, to all of New Zealand, on breakfast television that we were going to do this, and the board, he hadn't told them, so then they were left in the position of going, well, we're not going to deny New Zealand a 4-day week, but it came because Andrew was interested in, he'd read an article about that productivity in the UK and Canada was less than 3 hours a day. I'm going to say less than 3 hours a day. I think the Canadian statistic actually was about 1.5 hours a day. So not great research. Not great results, but Andrew was academically interested in what gets in the way of productivity, and if we can improve productivity in the workplace through giving people time off, because he had this theory that what happened in people's lives was getting in the way. And so he went, well, why don't we just give them a day off and see what happens? So he was coming at it from a productivity conversation about, how we might be able to change it. And then when we went through the pilot.
Sorry, can you see me?
Yes, we can.
We can see you, John.
Okay.
We're going to come to you in 1 minute. Thank you for persevering.
Thank God.
When we went through the pilot, we we actually then thought, oh my gosh, this is good for gender balance. It's great for the environment. And actually, even though we'd gone down this from productivity and it was about helping people get on with their lives, really understanding the well-being in the workplace implications of this. And so that, it layered on it. So we ended up creating 4-Day Week Global out of all the attention that went there. I'm sure there's plenty of your people on the call who have heard of the Perpetual Guardian trial. And we established 4-Day Week Global because we were having so many conversations. It was about having a space to be able to do that. And that organisation has morphed into an organisation that runs pilot programs around the world. We conduct our research and we help and support and governments to start affecting change. And we've created an online community that enables all of the 4-day weekers, whether they've done our pilot program or not, to get in and talk to each other and share ideas, because she says in a nice segue, we all want to be like John, who has been able to do it since 2015 successfully and sustainably, no matter what's happening in the economy.
Perfect segue. And Charlotte, I invite you to put a link in the chat in terms of anybody wanting to connect with your organization. I know you were instrumental in helping Maureen launch her pilot. John Nash, so excited to see you in addition to hearing you. Thank you so much for persevering. We're very excited to have you on screen now. John, we're going to...
Excited to be here.
Yes, happy to have you. So let's just rewind a little bit, and perhaps if you could maybe introduce yourself and your organization, and also tell us a little bit about your experience with the 4-day work week.
Okay. Well, yeah, my name's John Nash. I'm here in London, and I'm the founder of Nicholson Search and Selection. We're a specialist recruitment company. We recruit at board and leadership level for technology startups and scale-ups. We've got teams in London, Nantes in France, and Frankfurt in Germany, and we work internationally across Europe and North America. And as far as the 4-day week is concerned, we launched our 4-day week, as I heard earlier, even though you couldn't see me, I could hear you. We launched our 4-day week way back in 2015. And I'll very quickly tell you the reasons why we launched it, or why we implemented it in the first place. Well, firstly, I wanted to do a 4-day week, and but I didn't feel as though I could do that on my own. I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, the whole company is going to have to do it as well. And I, looked into it a little bit. And understood that there were some fairly major organizations across Europe that had done it. Nothing I could tell in the UK, but Scandinavia certainly. But also I was inspired by an ex-colleague of mine, and Charlotte knows this story quite well, an ex-colleague who, after a second child, came back after maternity leave on 3 days a week. And she had her best year ever. So I thought, well, if she can do it, then we can do it. So yeah, we took the plunge.
Wow, since 2015, and you've stayed true to that model since 2015. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been, as far as we're concerned, it's been a great success. As far as our results are concerned, we've increased productivity every year, apart from 2020, the pandemic year, which I don't think anybody grew that year. But our results have been fantastic. And I think when it comes to productivity, what we've noticed is that because it's not just because people don't want to lose the benefit, people want to stay working for a company like ours. And the 4-day week is just one aspect of what makes a good company and a progressive business. And I think if people don't leave, then it makes it a lot easier to increase your productivity, because I think that's the biggest handicap to growth is staff churn. especially in our business.
And so what I know from speaking one-on-one with you and Maureen is that, to be clear for the audience, both of your businesses in reducing work hours have not seen a reduction in business revenues. In fact, you've increased productivity. And as you said, other than the COVID years, your business has done even better with employees working less hours. I think that's one thing I wanted to be clear to the audience. So this is about increasing productivity. So to increase productivity, one has to somehow examine how you're working and figure out how can you increase your productivity. So I'm wondering, Maureen or John, if you could comment on that. I know, John, you did this a long time ago, but I suspect that there's touch points along the way to make sure you revisit whatever those strategies are to increase productivity. And Maureen, you went through this fairly recently, probably last spring, to examine how your team members were working and what elements of their day-to-day work would be considered not productive. So how do you go about finding that out and course correcting that? I'll toss that out to either of you to take a stab at it.
Maureen, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can offer a couple of things that we did. One was we asked our staff to journal their day for about a 3 to 4 week period, to write down everything that they do from the minute they get up to the minute they call it the end of the day. And the reason we wanted to do that was to create higher awareness of how their time is being spent. So until we know and become aware, realize how we're spending our time, we can't really fix it or improve upon it. The second thing that we did was we held a pain points session, what we called it, where we brought all of our staff together and had a very open and honest discussion about all of the things that were not productive and frustrating and causing more work than they needed to be. So we came out with a list this long. We're still working on improvements as a result of that exercise, but it informed us a lot as to how we could make some positive changes to improve productivity.
Okay, well, if I can add to that, and we probably didn't do anything quite as scientific as you, Maureen, but what we were very clear about right from the word go was that we needed to do away with all non-essential meetings. That was the first thing we did. The other thing that was really important was that people needed to recognize the amount of time they spent doing personal things at work, and that whether that was Facebook or Instagram, or whether it was organizing their plumber or whatever it might be. We said we can't afford that time anymore, so you need to do that in your own time, and also any appointments that needed to happen, which were of a personal nature, needed to happen on the Friday when they were off. So we lost a lot of downtime from people doing their own personal stuff. So and also targets didn't change. So everybody knew what they still had to achieve, because we're doing a 4-day week. Didn't mean to say that targets were being reduced. So people just became far more efficient and far more focused. And, one of the things that I've learned about work is it's like water, it will find its own level. And if you give people 7 days to do something, they will take 7 days. But if they only have 4 days, then they'll get it done in 4 days. And really, that's what was our experience.
And so from what I know through speaking with the both of you, John, your company model is Fridays are off.
That's
and
right.
Maureen, you had your staff pick a Monday to Thursday or a Tuesday to Friday work week, so that you could cover off 5 days a week. So those are quite different approaches. And John, what I heard there was that family appointments, the plumber, dentist, those kinds of things where somebody might, run out on their, lunch hour and take a little bit more time beyond lunch to go to the dentist. All of that now happens on Fridays. That's one of the changes that you made in your business in terms of taking out focus on other activities beyond work, correct?
Yes, of course, where possible. Obviously, if somebody has an urgent appointment they need to attend to, then clearly they can do that. But where possible, we encourage everything of a personal nature to happen on a Friday.
Now, what happens with the two of you if one of your clients has something urgent come up on a Friday at 6:30 at night, Maureen? Is that something that you just wait till Monday morning till whoever comes in that's working Monday deals with, or how does that work from a client perspective? Which of course leads me to the next conversation for both of you is, how did your clients respond to this? But let's deal with the urgent client issue on the weekend first.
Yeah, so we have a Friday-Monday model, meaning that half of our staff work on Fridays and half work on Mondays. And we had to design that schedule quite strategically to ensure that our clients would always have cover. So we're open 5 days a week. If our client needs us on one of those 2 days, a Friday or Monday, there is a substitute. If it's not your main person that you would go to, there is a second person who's familiar with the account and the work and the programming that's going on. So that's essentially how we did it, and it's worked quite well. We haven't had a single complaint from our clients.
So somebody's on call.
Somebody's on call. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. John, what about you? How do you handle that client emergency on a Friday night?
Yeah, well, I mean, for a start, in our business, generally speaking, things don't happen on a Friday night, but they do happen on a Friday for sure, but only occasionally. And it's only occasionally now for us because our clients and even our new clients very quickly understand that we don't work Fridays. And so that has negated the any reason for people to be working on a Friday. However, things do happen. The rest of the world is still working on a Friday, and if we have to deal with stuff, we deal with stuff on a Friday, just as we used to. If something happened on a weekend, then we deal with it on the weekend. It really is no different. But we did talk to our clients at the start about what we were doing, and because we work with technology startups, generally speaking, I mean, they're often very progressive companies themselves, and in fact, most companies were very pleased to see what we were doing, and at least 3 of our clients have actually adopted the 4-day week as a consequence of what we've done. And I know that obviously other companies in our sector have also adopted it. So, it's more of an education thing, really. But we're not about to start booking our own meetings on a Friday if we can avoid it, obviously. But if something comes up, we deal with it. Okay.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Charlotte. Charlotte, you mentioned in your opening remarks, some benefits beyond the actual workplace itself from the business leader perspective. You touched on the environment, some gender balance benefits and whatnot. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting because the impact of us working the long hours that we do, and for most of the people on this call, we're not talking a 40-hour week anyway. We're probably talking more than that. So therefore, we've got to look at what is the impact on our environment of those extra hours. And when you are able to pull back, now obviously prior to the pandemic, if you actually were working a 4-day week, then you are commuting 1 day less. You are putting less cars on the road. With flexible and remote that's come out of the pandemic, some of these things are a little bit different. However, the UK data is that if the UK shifted to a 4-day week, it would be the equivalent of taking every single private car off the road. So there's those sort of things that are a start to become important. There was a concern, which doesn't seem to be being borne out by the research, that people would actually start consuming more if they have more time, but they tend not to. They tend to take up more hobbies. They tend to spend more time with family. They tend to spend a bit more time with the things that John and Maureen have talked about. Then, of course, you've got the gender balance whole idea, and how many people on this webinar who have worked a 4-day week on 80% pay, but given 100% of the effort. And this goes to John's point here. Now, in his industry, people tend to get paid based upon results. And so the woman that was returned to work was probably getting a sufficient remuneration for what she was achieving for the business. But for a lot of employees, you're just giving away 20% of what you're doing. And that's part of the reason why gender balancing isn't working for us. We've done so much to pull women up in the workplace, but we're actually not doing enough to encourage our men out of the workplace and normalizing it for them to take on some of these childcare duties, to be the one that isn't at work because a child needs them or a parent needs them. So there's a realignment with that. And then most importantly are the mental health statistics. And so it'll be great to sort of talk through some of the things we find from our research, but I will give you this piece here. In the latest research that came out of our UK pilot, which was our largest ever, and the results for the pilot that Maureen is on will be available in a couple of months' time, and will be added to our US and Canadian data from the previous pilot. But absenteeism in our latest pilot went down by 65%.
Wow. That's significant, very significant.
It's significant. Now, it's significant economically for a business, right? Because, absenteeism is a really expensive way to run your business. Absenteeism in your business. But what does that telling us about people? They are healthier. They are less stressed. They're coming to work rather than calling off. And so what are all of the implications that come out of a statistic like that? And I've got some other fun ones to share with you as we move forward.
Yes, great. Thank you. I'm just seeing a question in the chat about a question around the hours where John and Maureen were concerned. Essentially, you reduced hours, but you did not reduce pay. So your employees were working less hours in the week, but more productive hours based on your analysis of how they were spending their time. They were getting a day off and their pay was staying the same. I'm just responding to a question in the chat to clarify that. What didn't go right? John, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this is because you've been doing this for many years. And I know you said to me when we first met, you really must measure over the period of a few years, because in a pilot, people can be on their best behavior. And then they go back to perhaps their old ways. I know you had made that interesting comment. So maybe just a couple of comments from Maureen and John about maybe some of the things that didn't go right when you were first launching this, or John, even now, things that maybe, bump off the road. Maureen?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'll go first if you like. Well, for us, there's nothing too much that hasn't gone right. I have to say that straight off, but I guess if anything, it is the people getting a little bit too used to a 4-day week and falling into bad habits and kind of becoming a little bit complacent about the whole thing. So that can happen over time, and I guess. One of the other threats, as far as we're concerned, is because Charlotte's doing such a great job of getting everybody to work a 4-day week, that it's becoming less of a differentiator now. But
I remember you saying to me, "Don't tell everybody about this."
That's right. Well, fortunately, I don't know what the percentage of companies doing a 4-day week is now, but fortunately, it's still very low. Relatively speaking, especially in our industry, even though there's a few that are doing it. But it is complacency. I'd say that was the biggest downside. With some people, it's always the case. Some people like to be very regimented in everything that they do, and some people can't handle having the freedom, I guess. And I know that's a strange thing to say, but it's true. Not everybody reacts the same way to having the flexibility and the freedom of a 4-day week. So, but that's it. Really, everybody loves it. I can't say that there have been too many downsides.
Great, thanks, Maureen.
Yeah, I would say something similar to John in that I have noticed maybe a little bit of falling off a bit on some of the productivity gains that we made. We don't have our data yet, but one measure that we look at is meetings and time spent in meetings. And we, as a service agency, record our time on timesheets, so we can see very clearly how much time we're spending in meetings. Back in November, we issued a challenge to our staff to get under 500 hours collectively of meetings. And we met that challenge, and we had a free lunch as a result. But we've climbed back up. So January, we went up to 562 hours or something like that. So that might have just been, you know, the month is a bit heavier, a bit busier, but we did notice that. So we want to make sure that we're doing refresher training on some of the pointers and habits that we picked up toward the beginning of the trial. And then the only other thing that's posing
just before you go on, can you just explain that number a little bit more? You said 542 hours. Is that collectively or individually over a month, or how?
That's collectively. That's collectively in a month. So there's 25 of us. I don't know what that works out to each person each week, but we were well over that prior to entering the trial, and we started to come down as we got trained and started to cut out some of those meetings. So we wanted to hit under 500 as a new low for us, and we did achieve that in November, but it crept back up. December is a difficult month because of the holidays to know whether we're still trending in the right direction. But in January, we went up quite significantly again, up to 562. So is that just, are we just, did we just have to spend more time in meetings because of the nature of the work, or are we falling into some of the old habits of just having meetings for the sake of having meetings? Still not sure about that. Now, I guess the other big one for us is because our business is not always predictable in terms of how busy we're going to be. We do have very busy periods. So we have these peaks and valleys, and through a couple of those peaks in our trial, a number of our people within certain teams couldn't get their rest day or couldn't get all of their rest day. So our rule of thumb is the client still has to be serviced. If we all work together and practice all of these great habits, we should be able to do it, but there will be times when you might have to check in on your day off for an hour or whatever it might be. So we're just finding that we haven't managed well enough yet through those really busy periods to figure that out.
Okay, a couple of questions in the chat. Charlotte, somebody's asking about accessing the research. I think you've put something in the chat there. It's at 4dayweek.com. That's
yes.
for the number 4. So the research is there. We just released research on the UK trial just a couple of weeks ago on February 22nd, I believe, and there's more coming out in the spring, correct, on US and Australia. Is that correct?
Yes, so we run pilot programs constantly, which goes to the other question from Robin Johnston. You can so the way the pilot program works is that we generally will spend a couple of months helping you get ready for your pilot, and then you run it. But depending on how ready you already are, that can obviously be reduced in time. Also, it gives our researchers a chance to come alongside you and actually talk about and do the benchmarking of how that all works. So every time we run a pilot program, it is researched. Your company gets its own individual information, but then we're rolling out top-ups to this every couple of months. And the reason why that's important is because what we're looking for is trends around the world, but also as we grow the data set, we've got more information to talk to some of these really important things, like whether men are doing their bit at home.
I see Always. A question. I see a question in the chat about how to measure productivity, because we've talked about that, a couple of things that we've claimed that employees are more productive. I assume that's because your business has not suffered in terms of revenues, COVID aside. People are working less hours, but your business revenue has been the same or increased. Is that the translation to how employees are more productive? John, Maureen?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of not only your sales revenue, but also the productivity per head as well, and the performance per head. That's how we would measure it. And obviously, if your head count is going up, then obviously your revenue needs to go up proportionally, and hopefully increase proportionately as well. So that's how we measure it.
Okay, Maureen?
Yeah, similar, certainly revenues, we wanted to ensure that our revenues were not going to decrease. At a minimum, we're going to stay the same or grow. We looked at things like absenteeism, wanted to make sure that that continued or that was on the right track. Use of recruiters. So while, we haven't had a lot of opportunity yet to determine how we're going to be able to attract new staff, but in the past year, we've spent a lot of money on recruiters. And so we want to try to reduce that and hope that the 4-day week experience is going to be of interest to new candidates. And then finally, client satisfaction. So we surveyed our clients before we began the trial. We survey them all the time anyway, but we did a special survey to measure accessibility and quality of service levels from us, and we'll measure that again next month in April. We anecdotally, we haven't heard anything negative from our clients, so we're expecting that the post-trial results will be good.
Great, thank you.
I think, if I can just quickly jump on that and answer that question as well. When people ask me, how do you measure productivity? My answer to you is, what are you measuring now? Because we're all measuring certain things, and you are probably measuring the things that matter to you now. So keep measuring those. Use those as your benchmark for how you measure, because then that way they're obviously things you value, so it's easy for you to continue on doing it. Because if you develop a whole pile of additional measures, are you going to keep doing it when things get busy? But also you've got historical data on that as well, so you can see trends coming through as well. So and how do you keep the productivity up? What are you doing with performance management now? Some of these questions that come up, it's really what are you doing now to ensure that productivity remains high? These are the same skills that we're using. Often when you come on a pilot program, it highlights some of the things you're not doing or not doing well, and it gives you an opportunity to go, you know what, these are going to start being important things in our business.
Right, let's stay with you for a moment, Charlotte. Can this work for almost any company? Are there only certain kinds of businesses that should be looking at this or could be looking at this? And John, you might have some reflections on this too, because you've been doing this a long time. So no doubt you have colleagues who work in different sectors that you've had many conversations with. So Charlotte first, and then John on that question.
Yes, look, I get lots of people say, look, I never work in blue collar, and yet there are manufacturing plants that do it. There are restaurants and hospitality organizations that do it. There are retail stores that do it. It's about whether there's an agile thinking leader at the top of the pile that is prepared to give it a go. And so that, there is pretty much any industry that is doing it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I obviously I've only got the experience of our industry, even though I speak to other people about the 4-day week outside of service industry, and often they say, this will never work. This could never work in my business. I was speaking to a transport manager recently who said, look, what am I supposed to do? Keep the trucks off the road? The reality is there are ways around that, but really Charlotte is going to be the expert on that, and I'm sure there are lots of ways to implement it in other markets in a more flexible way than we do it. I mean, ours is very clearly Fridays off. That's not going to work for everybody, and I'm sure that if some companies can just do job shares, or they could get involved, or they could choose different days depending on the individual and so on. But as I say, Charlotte's got a broad experience.
Yeah, look, we strongly advocate for reducing work time without reducing pay and without reducing productivity. So we have a concept 180, 100, 100% pay, 80% time, 100% productivity. And how you reduce work time really comes down to your employees. Ask them, get them to explain how they do it. And the reason for doing that is because when you can give them the time off that matters to them the most, they'll actually work really hard to keep it. And then they'll get all of the additional mental health and physical health benefits from having the right sort of time off. It's not an unknown business philosophy that when people are doing the job that they want to do in the way that they want to do it, they're just more productive. It's not rocket science.
Charlotte, I believe it's Boston College that is your research
Yes.
partner that works across all of these studies, credible institution. It's fair to say there are critics of the research. I was reviewing some of them yesterday. The report is biased. It was created by 4-day work week. It wasn't peer reviewed, skeptical of why the data isn't public, different independent variables, a few things like that. Do you have any responses to those at all?
Yeah, look, it is independent of us. We do not pay for the research. Dr. Juliet Shaw has organised funding independent from us, which is very deliberate on our behalf. We do not want to influence it. What we do provide is the companies for her to research. So, we have an enormous cohort. Now, they are self-selecting, which is one of the criticisms. And it is this particular piece of research is only about our pilot programs. But we do have other research going on in the background that's looking at businesses that have been doing it for longer periods of time. John is on the list of people for us to put on to have a conversation with about that. And we will continue to engage with the people as like Maureen. So over time, we are looking at how that comes together. So the research is absolutely independent. The data is not available because researchers like to be able to hold their IP and go, you know what, this is that it's required to be made open, I believe, after 3 years, and it will be. But Juliet's having a ball. She's had a TED talk out of it, and she is at the forefront. And here is a woman who has been talking about reducing work time since 1990, and she's been banging on about it. And, people have listened a little bit, but now people are finally listening to her. So, yeah, I'm fully on board with her not necessarily opening up the research, but we're releasing more and more of it every time. There is also a slight privacy requirement with it, the likes of any research data that we will release will be anonymized. The likes of Maureen don't necessarily want the inside of her business necessarily being publicly available.
All right, wonderful. I see some questions in the chat around, are there any large corporations that have been involved in this with thousands of employees, or any government organizations? Yep.
So a couple of things. One is we're running a 86 company pilot for the Portuguese government. So they have got businesses doing it over there. We have a number of, in the UK, it's called the civil service, the public service organisations doing it in the UK and also in New Zealand. The UAE government has brought it out in the UAE, and it's largely the government that is doing it there. And as far as large organisations are concerned, yes, they tend to sit more quietly. But the large example of that is Unilever. And the reason why large businesses are quiet about it is because when Unilever announced that they were doing a 4-day week, they had at the same time a large market announcement, and it got completely ignored by the media, who only wanted to know about this. And so it's a very, so some businesses choose to talk about it quite loudly, and a lot of businesses choose not to.
Great, thank you. Another question in the chat about vacation time. I'm assuming, Maureen and John, you didn't change vacation allotment for your employees. It didn't go down or up as a result of a shift to a 4-day work week?
Well, actually, officially it did, because we went from having 25 to 30 days, depending on length of service, to 20 to 25 days, because the reality is when you want a week off, you only have to book 4 days off. So holiday allowance does go down. However, yeah, and in actual fact, when I launched it, one employee put her hand up and said, "I knew there'd be a catch." When we reduced the holiday days, when she suddenly realized that she was going to get about 80 days holiday a year instead of 25. So yeah.
Yes, Maureen?
No, we did not make any adjustment to vacation.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's shift a little bit to lessons learned and tips that we can apply. Anybody listening in any workplace, perhaps people leaders who are thinking about what can they unpack from this that they can go back to work and apply. You know, what has changed for the two of you in the way that you lead people as a result of this?
Well, the way we lead people, I think that hasn't changed really too much. I think it's all part of the kind of business we want to be. And so this is just one other element of it. I think, you know, what's really important, and it's something that I really wanted to get out there as well, is that implementing the 4-day week is not, you know, the solution to your problems. You know, it's not going to be the only thing you have to implement in order to improve productivity, in order to make sure that people aren't leaving your business and people are happy. You have to put all sorts of other things in place as well, and that has always gone hand in hand as far as I'm concerned. So you need to have the right leadership. You need to have an enjoyable work environment. You need to get your training and development right. You need to get your pay right. You need to recognize success. You need to do all those other things. And that has remained the same. And I think, you know, there's other things that we do that maybe some other companies don't do. So, for instance, we don't measure KPIs in the way that in our industry companies traditionally do, and that's because, again, we feel as though people should be trusted, and so it's all part of that. So, I think, if anything, the 4-day week has just been another way that we've shown that we're a progressive business.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, I think for us during the preparation period that Charlotte spoke about, we spent a couple of months learning and just having some fabulous training experiences that our staff were exposed to. And it was almost overwhelming. It was great, but it was almost overwhelming because there were so many good ideas. And what we kind of took away from that was everybody works differently, has different working styles. And so I think it's increased our desire to have a flexible work environment where people make their own decisions about how they're going to achieve that productivity. So we had our people each create we called it a personalized productivity plan ahead of signing into the trial. Which were just delightful to read. I read every single one of them, and it gave everybody their own path to how they were going to be efficient and productive. So I think that was one of the big.
So anybody could do that with their teams, create a personal productivity plan to raise awareness about how, if there's any time wasters during the day, to think more carefully about meetings and those types of things. That could be applied anywhere.
For sure, absolutely.
That's great. Somebody's asked in the chat if we have applied a 4-day work week at MHRC. No, we haven't, but I will tell you that our work week is very different than it was pre-COVID. My team members start and end at different times. I've hired people on full remote employment contracts. That was never happening before the pandemic. So I think every workplace finds their way to focus on workplace wellness. At least I hope more businesses, as a result, especially of the pandemic, are thinking more carefully about workplace wellness and finding what works for them. Just the last couple of comments, and I know, Charlotte, you'd be happy to hear from anyone in the audience if they're interested in learning more about this, seeing the research. speaking to others that have implemented this, I'm sure you'd be more than happy to hear from them. And I know you've put information in the chat. It was just very interesting when I was looking over the weekend, sort of on the history of work. Generations ago, people worked from first light to dark, back generations ago, and that was largely in agriculture and manufacturing. And then, we moved to 6 days a week with 1 day off, but people were still working 70 plus hours a week. And then in the 1800s, the American labor unions invented a 9 to 5, 8-hour workday that stuck, and that went mainstream. And then actually in 1926, it was Henry Ford who had a bit of an impact on changing that. And he moved his operations to 5 days a week from 6 days a week with no change in compensation. So 40-hour work week, 5 days a week. So it's really interesting. There's a lot online. If anybody listening is interested to dig into this more, it's all over social media. I know the Globe and Mail published something on February 6th, 2020, just recently. Bloomberg, January 19th, Narcity, Toronto, talked about some Ontario municipalities that are going to 4-day work week. So there's certainly a lot out there. And I think most importantly, a lot of things we can learn from this and unpack and apply to our people leadership. Last word, Charlotte, would you like to say anything about anyone who's interested in learning more about this?
Look, reducing work time has to be part of our future because it's the right thing to do, not only in business, but also for our society. So if you want to be on the right side of history, give us a call. We're more than happy to talk to you and see if it's right for you. And it might not be right for you today, but being on a pathway to making it right for you is very much it's just something I feel you can't ignore anymore.
And certainly we have a lot of technology that can help streamlining the way we work and our ability to collaborate. The comments around good leadership have not been lost today. Thank you, John and Maureen and Charlotte, for underscoring that. It's not going to be a secret bullet to anything, but I think, Charlotte, you even said, enlightened leadership is important in terms of implementing changes to any workplace. So Maureen and John, really, really excited to have you here today and share your experiences. I'd just like to offer any last comments from either of you.
I would just encourage anybody who is in the position to consider some sort of work time reduction that you absolutely do it, try the 4-day week trial. For me and for my company, it's been life-changing.
Yeah, and I would add to that that the 4-day week gives people more control over their lives. And we talk about productivity, and you can talk about statistics as much as you like, but if people have got control, the pressure tends to be off a little bit, and happier people make more productive people. And we've certainly noticed that the team is happier doing a 4-day week than they are doing a 5-day week.
Wonderful, thank you. And I should just put in a plug for Mental Health Research Canada's workplace related research. We have all kinds of reports on our website at mhrc.ca. I have colleagues who spend a lot of time analyzing what's happening in different sectors as a part of our national polling and other work that we're doing with other partners. So this is a very important topic. We hope that all workplaces can move forward, and all leaders will think about how to make their workplaces more psychologically safe, more wellness friendly, with the people at the center of their business. So I'm very grateful that you all took time, John and Charlotte, out of your evening, Maureen, out of your day, to be with us today. And John, we got you in. I was really nervous there for a while, but thank you for persevering and staying with us. And I look forward to following up an email with all of you. And thank you again on behalf of everybody for being here today and sharing your most interesting insights. Congratulations on all you've accomplished, all three of you.